In 1925, a man invited a group of the biggest scrap metal dealers in France to a secret meeting in one of the grandest hotels in Paris and sold them the Eiffel Tower. The tower was not for sale. It was not his, and the man who bought it was too ashamed to tell a single soul, which meant one thing: it could be sold again. This is the story of Victor Lustig. Start with the tower, because the tower really was in trouble. It went up in 1889 as the showpiece of a World's Fair, and Paris partly hated it on sight. Artists signed a protest calling it a useless, monstrous, gigantic black smokestack. It was never meant to be permanent. The plan was to tear it down in 1909. Radio saved it. 300 meters of iron makes a very good place to hang an antenna. But by 1925, the tower was 36 years old and expensive to keep. A single repaint swallows 60 tons of paint. That year, a Paris newspaper ran a piece about the cost and trouble of maintaining it, and wondered whether the city might be better off without it. One man read that article more carefully than anyone else in France. Victor Lustig, born in Bohemia in 1890, polished at boarding school in Dresden, fluent in 5 languages, and traveling under a title he had awarded himself, Count. Where Paris saw a news item, Lustig saw inventory. He hired a forger to produce official government stationery and promoted himself to Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. Letters went out to a handful of scrap metal dealers. A matter of state, strictly confidential, please come to a private suite. There, the Deputy Director General explained that the Republic could no longer afford its tower. It would be sold for scrap, more than 7,000 tons of iron, but the public would riot if they knew. So, sealed bids, gentlemen. Absolute discretion. Then he followed the first of the commandments con men still attribute to him: be a patient listener. He was not listening for the highest bid. He was listening for the right buyer. He found him in André Poisson, a businessman from outside the capital who wanted more than money, a seat among the inner circle of Parisian business. The winning bid was arranged to be his. Then came the masterstroke. Lustig took Poisson aside and confessed that a public servant's salary was not, frankly, equal to the life a man in his position was expected to lead. He was asking for a bribe, and that is what closed the sale. Because a corrupt official is a real official. No fraud would think to invent one. Poisson paid the bribe. Then he paid for the Eiffel Tower, around 70,000 francs, all in. By the time anyone thought to check, Lustig was over the border into Austria. In Austria, he did something better than hiding. Every morning he read the Paris papers, looking for the scandal. It never appeared. Poisson had discovered that nobody at the ministry had ever heard of a tower sale, and then told no one, because a man buying his way into elite Paris could not afford to be the man who bought the Eiffel Tower. And a con that nobody reports is a con that never officially happened. So Lustig went back and ran it again. Same ministry, same pitch, a fresh room of scrap dealers. This time, one of them went to the police. Lustig slipped out of France a step ahead of the warrant and sailed for the country whose money he loved best of all, America. He traveled with a prop, the Romanian money box, a small mahogany chest with 2 brass slots and some very serious-looking levers, which, he explained, always reluctantly, could duplicate any banknote placed inside it. It only needed 6 hours per copy. The copy was, of course, a genuine bill he had loaded in advance, and it passed every inspection at every bank, because it was real money. He sold that box again and again for extraordinary sums. A Texas sheriff paid thousands of dollars for one, worked out about 6 hours too late what he had actually bought, and hunted Lustig all the way to Chicago, where Lustig apologized for the misunderstanding, calmed him down, and refunded him in full, in counterfeit bills. In Chicago, he also played the most dangerous audience in America. He asked Al Capone to put $50,000 into a scheme, locked the money in a safe deposit box, and did nothing for 2 months. Then he returned every dollar and confessed the deal had fallen through. Capone, looking at possibly the only honest man in Chicago, handed him $5,000 for his trouble, which was the $5,000 Lustig had come for. The small cons funded a big one. In 1930, with a pharmacist named William Watts, Lustig went industrial, engraved plates, and thousands of counterfeit dollars flowing into circulation every month for 5 years. Agents came to call the notes Lustig money. What ended it was not detective work. It was jealousy. He took up with the younger woman, and his mistress made one anonymous phone call. On the 10th of May, 1935, federal agents closed around him on a New York street. In his pocket was a key to a locker in the Times Square subway station. Inside, 51,000 counterfeit dollars and the plates that printed them. He had one exit left. That September, he faked an illness at the Federal House of Detention, went out of a window on a rope, and disappeared into Manhattan in broad daylight. 27 days later, they took him in Pittsburgh. A judge gave him 15 years plus 5 for the window and sent him to Alcatraz. Pneumonia found him there in March 1947. He died 2 days later in the Prison Medical Center at Springfield, Missouri. The death certificate had a line for occupation. Someone typed, "Apprentice salesman." In 1992, Pepsi printed 800,000 winning bottle caps. By mistake, each one promised 1,000,000 pesos, about $40,000. Overnight, a soft drink promotion turned into a $32 billion debt, and one of the biggest corporate disasters in history. This is the story of the number 349. It started as a masterstroke. In February 1992, Pepsi Philippines launched a promotion called Number Fever. Under every bottle cap of Pepsi, 7-Up, Mountain Dew, and Mirinda was a 3-digit number. Every day, a winning number was announced on television. Match it, and the cap in your hand was worth anything from 100 pesos up to 1 million. In a country where many workers earned around 100 pesos a day, 1,000,000 pesos wasn't a prize. It was a different life. The Philippines went all in. People collected caps by the jarful. Families watched the draw together every night. Monthly sales jumped from $10 million to $14 million. Pepsi's market share climbed from 19% to almost 25%. The marketing budget for prizes was $2 million, and it was working so well, Pepsi kept the fever running. Then came the evening of May 25, 1992. The winning number announced on TV, 349. Across the country, people ran to their kitchens and turned over their caps. And this time, something impossible happened. In house after house, street after street, the caps matched. Tricycle drivers, factory workers, grandmothers, school kids. Hundreds of thousands of people were holding a cap that said 349, under a promise that said 1,000,000 pesos. People wept, people prayed, some quit their jobs on the spot, some borrowed money against the prize to throw celebration feasts. That night, an entire country believed it had become rich. Inside Pepsi, that same night, phones started ringing and did not stop. Because of a printing error at the plant, 800,000 caps had been produced with the number 349, caps that were never meant to win. The fine print said a winning cap needed a matching security code. The 349 caps didn't have it. But nobody celebrating in the street had ever heard of a security code. Do the math Pepsi's executives did that night. 800,000 caps times 1,000,000 pesos, $32 billion, roughly 100 times the value of the entire company in the Philippines. Pepsi's answer came days later. The caps were invalid. Instead, as a quote, gesture of goodwill, each 349 holder could claim 500 pesos, $18 for the million they'd been promised. 486,000 people quietly took the money. It cost Pepsi almost $9 million, more than 4 times the original prize budget. The rest did not take it quietly. The celebration curdled into rage. Winners formed alliances. Crowds marched with their caps held up like evidence. Pepsi trucks were attacked in the streets, and delivery drivers started refusing routes. Executives received death threats and moved their families out of the country. Then it turned deadly. In February 1993, a grenade thrown in Manila killed a school teacher and a 5-year-old child. Months later in Davao, another attack killed 3 Pepsi warehouse workers. A marketing promotion, a soda game about numbers under bottle caps, now had a body count. The battle moved to the courts, and it stayed there for over a decade. 22,000 people took legal action, 689 civil suits, more than 5,000 criminal complaints. In 1996, a court awarded claimants 10,000 pesos each in moral damages. An appeals court tripled it. Then in 2006, 14 years after the draw, the Supreme Court of the Philippines made the final call. The security code decided the winner. Pepsi owed the 349 holders nothing. Legally, Pepsi was right. It said so on the fine print. But the fine print doesn't run a business. Trust does. Pepsi's market share collapsed below where it had started and took years to crawl back. And the number itself never recovered. In the Philippines, 349 became shorthand for a promise that's too good to be true. Because for one night in May 1992, 800,000 families were millionaires, and by morning, They were $18 winners, holding the most expensive printing error in history.
In January 1919, a wave of molasses moved through the streets of Boston at 35 miles an hour and killed 21 people. That sentence sounds like a joke. It gets told like one. A funny old disaster, sticky and absurd, the kind of thing you read out to somebody at a bar. It was not funny at all. And the reason those people died is not the reason you would guess. It is not that they drowned in syrup. It is that molasses does something that almost no other liquid does. And a group of physicists at Harvard only worked out exactly what in 2016, 97 years after it happened. Start with the tank. It stood on the waterfront in the North End, 50 feet tall and 90 feet across. It held 2.3 million gallons. The company that owned it was the United States Industrial Alcohol Company. And it is worth being clear about what the molasses was for, because it was not for cake. Molasses ferments into ethanol. Ethanol goes into liquor, but it also goes into munitions. This was the tail end of the First World War. That tank was industrial feedstock. The man who oversaw its construction was Arthur Gell, the company's treasurer. Not an engineer. He had no architectural or engineering experience whatsoever. He was under pressure to have the tank ready for an incoming shipment, and he made a decision that later became the center of everything. Before putting it into service, he did not properly test it. He put water in it, but not enough water to reveal whether it would hold. The tank leaked from the beginning. Not a little. It leaked so badly that people in the neighborhood came and collected the molasses that ran out of it, and took it home. The company's response to a structure visibly leaking its contents onto a public street was to have it painted brown. Sit with that for a second, not repaired. Painted. Painted the same color as the thing coming out of it, so that you could no longer see it coming out. That is not an accident waiting to happen. That is an accident being deliberately made harder to see. The 15th of January, 1919 was unusually warm for a Boston winter. The temperature had climbed above 40 degrees Fahrenheit after several days of hard cold. The day before, a ship had delivered a fresh load of molasses, warmed to make it flow more easily during transfer, and it had gone into a tank that was already close to full. At around 12:30 in the afternoon, the tank came apart. Witnesses described a sound like a machine gun. That was the rivets going. What came out was not a puddle spreading, it was a wall. It was about 25 feet high at the front, and it moved at roughly 35 miles an hour. That is faster than you can run. It is faster than most people can react. It took an elevated railway support off its footings, it moved buildings off their foundations. It picked up a firehouse and pushed it. 21 people were killed. About 150 were injured. And now the part that the jokes always miss. Why does a slow liquid move at 35 miles an hour? Molasses is roughly 1.5 times as dense as water, and something like 4,000 times as viscous. Intuitively, it should ooze. It should not sprint. The answer is that molasses is not a normal fluid, it is what is called non-Newtonian. Its thickness is not fixed, it changes depending on what is being done to it. Molasses shear thins. Push it hard enough, and it gets runnier. So at the moment the tank burst, with 2.3 million gallons behind it shoving, the molasses became far more liquid than it is when it sits in a jar, and it ran like water. That is the first half. The second half is the one that killed people. In 2016, a team led by Nicole Sharp presented work at the American Physical Society's Fluid Dynamics meeting. A Harvard graduate student, Jordan Kennedy, ran a rheological survey of blackstrap molasses, measuring how its flow properties change with temperature. They also flooded a scale model of the neighborhood with cold corn syrup. And what they established is that as the molasses spread out through the streets, it cooled fast. It had come out of the tank warm, and it was pouring into a January afternoon in Boston, thinning as it spread and losing heat the whole way. As it cooled, and as the shove behind it stopped, the viscosity came back, dramatically. So the substance behaved like a flash flood on impact, and like quicksand about a minute later. People survived the wave. They were not killed by the impact. They were held in place while the material around their chests and their faces stiffened, and rescuers could not pull them out fast enough, and they suffocated. That is what actually happened in the North End. It is not a funny story. It is one of the more horrible ways a person can die. The search for the dead ran for 4 days. Part of the reason it took that long is the same physics. Rescuers were working in a material that resisted them, in the dark, in January, and many of the people they found were so completely covered that they were hard to recognize. Some of the bodies were never in the wreckage at all. They had been carried out into Boston Harbor, and they were recovered 3 and 4 months later. The cleanup took weeks in the immediate area, and several hundred people worked on it. They brought in a fireboat and washed the streets down with salt water, because fresh water did not shift it. They spread sand to soak up what was left, and then the city did the rest of the spreading on its own. Rescuers and cleanup crews and people who came to look walked it out of the north end on their boots. It went onto subway platforms, onto the seats of trains and streetcars, into the handsets of public telephones, into people's houses. One account put it simply: everything that a Bostonian touched was sticky. The harbor ran brown until the summer, and residents said for decades afterwards that on hot days, that part of the city still smelled of molasses. The company's defense was that anarchists had blown the tank up. That was not a random excuse. There were real anarchist bombings in that period, and it was the most plausible thing they could reach for. It did not work. 119 residents brought what became a class action. It ran for years. A court-appointed auditor, Hugh Ogden, took 3 years of hearings and found the company responsible. The steel was about half as thick as it should have been for a tank that size. It lacked manganese, which made it brittle. The rivet holes were flawed, and the cracks had started there. The settlement came to around $628,000, which is somewhere near $12 million today, roughly $7,000 for each person killed. Here is why this case is still taught. Before this, in a great deal of American construction, a company could put up a large structure on private land, largely on its own say-so. The person signing off on that tank was a treasurer who could not have checked the maths if he had wanted to. Afterwards, that got much harder. The case is one of the standard reference points in the argument for requiring that certified engineers sign off on structural work, and for the inspections and permits that go with it. Every large tank you drive past, every stamped drawing, sits downstream of arguments that this disaster made impossible to keep losing. So the next time somebody tells you the funny one about the molasses flood, you can tell them the real one. A treasurer skipped the test. The tank leaked for 3 years, and they painted it. And 21 people died in a substance that turned solid around them while they were still alive.
By the most cited estimate, the world spent somewhere north of $300 billion getting ready for the 1st of January 2000. And then, that date arrived, and essentially nothing happened. There are 2 stories people tell about that. The first is that Y2K was a hoax, a panic sold by consultants. The second is that it was real and it was fixed, quietly, by an enormous amount of unglamorous work. Both of those are told with complete confidence. And there is a piece of evidence that neither side likes, which is the most interesting thing in this whole story. Start with why the bug existed at all, because it was not stupidity, it was arithmetic. In the 1960s, computer memory cost about $1 per bit. Commercial machines shipped with as little as 2 kilobytes of it. If you are storing a date, and you write the year as 4 digits instead of 2, you have just doubled the cost of that field on every record in every file forever. So programmers wrote the year as 2 digits. 68, 73, 99. Alan Greenspan, who later ran the American Central Bank, wrote those programs himself in that era. He said conserving that space was very important at the time. This was not a mistake. It was a correct decision made under a constraint that later went away, and the code outlived the constraint by 30 years. Here is the part that makes it a problem rather than a curiosity. If the year is 2 digits, then the machine does not store 1999, it stores 99. And when the clock rolls over, it stores 00. To a program doing arithmetic on that, 00 is not the year 2000, it is 1900. So anything that subtracted one date from another could produce an answer that was off by a century. How old is this patient? How long until this loan matures? How many days since this part was inspected? Is this transaction from the future? That is the whole bug. It is not exotic. And that is exactly why it was everywhere. Now, what actually happened on the day? Not nothing. Small things, all over the world. And they are worth listing, because they are the ground truth in an argument that is usually conducted with hand-waving. In Australia, bus ticket machines failed in 2 states. In Japan, ticket machines at train stations went down. Some telecoms produced wrong dates. And at the Shika nuclear power plant, a piece of radiation monitoring equipment failed. In South Korea, heating systems went out for 19 hours, and some hospital equipment miscalculated patient ages. In Greece, around 30,000 cash registers printed dates in 1900. In France, the National Weather Service published a date reading 01/01/19100. And in the United States, the Naval Observatory's own website displayed the year 19,100, which is a very funny place for that to happen. Every one of those is real, and every one of those is trivial. There is one more thing about the fix itself that almost never gets mentioned, and it changes how you should read all of this. A lot of the repair work did not remove the bug, it postponed it. The expensive permanent fix is date expansion. Go into every record and every file, widen the year field to 4 digits, and rebuild everything that touches it. That is correct, and it is enormous. So a great deal of the industry used a cheaper technique instead, called windowing. You leave the 2-digit year exactly where it is, and you add a small patch that says, when you have to compare or calculate, treat anything below a chosen cutoff as 20-something, and anything above it as 19-something. It was simpler to test and simpler to install, and therefore much less costly. It also works. For a while, windowing fixes were generally designed to hold for many decades, not forever, because the cutoff eventually comes round again, which means an unknown quantity of the code that was declared fixed in 1999 was not fixed. It was handed to somebody else, with a timer on it. Some of those timers have already gone off. In January of 2020, systems that had been patched with a cutoff of 20 began failing right on schedule. Parking meters in New York stopped accepting credit cards. Utility bills went out dated 1920. A wrestling video game crashed at midnight 20 years late, and the next deadline is already on the calendar. In January of 2038, the 32-bit counters that many computer systems still use to keep time run out of room, and the same arithmetic breaks again. That is worth sitting with, given that the popular verdict on Y2K is that it was solved. So which story is right? The case that the spending was necessary is straightforward. The absence of failure is the proof of the work. You cannot see the disasters that did not happen. Millions of lines of code were audited and repaired, and the reason your bank statement was correct on the 2nd of January is that somebody went and looked. There is even a bonus argument. The contingency and backup systems built for Y2K were still in place 20 months later, and they helped firms in Lower Manhattan recover after the 11th of September. That is a serious case. Hold on to it. Now, the evidence that side does not enjoy. Some countries barely prepared at all. Italy, South Korea, and Russia spent comparatively very little, and they had the same negligible problems as the countries that spent enormous sums. That is not a rumor. It is the observation that sits in the middle of every honest account of Y2K, and it is very hard to square with the heroic version. If $134 billion of American remediation was the difference between order and collapse, then the countries that skipped it should look different afterwards. They do not. The same firm whose estimate gives us the 300 billion figure also suggested the United States may have wasted around 40 billion of it. So here is the honest answer, which is less satisfying than either headline and more useful than both. Y2K was a real bug. That part is not in question, and the failures on the day prove the mechanism worked exactly as predicted, just at a scale nobody could feel. Critical systems were probably worth fixing. Banking, aviation, power, anything doing data arithmetic on money or safety. And a very large amount of the money went to auditing systems that would have coughed once and carried on. Consultancies had every incentive to define the problem broadly. Nobody in 1999 got promoted for saying this probably will not matter. Both things are true at once. It was necessary, and it was oversold, and those are not contradictory because they were not the same spending. The reason this matters now has nothing to do with old mainframes. Y2K is the clearest example we have of a problem that punishes you for solving it. Fix it well, and the evidence of the danger disappears, and you look like a fool who panicked. Fail to fix it, and everyone can see exactly what you should have done. Every large invisible risk has that shape. Anything where success looks identical to overreaction. The engineers who did the work in 1998 and 1999 got no credit at all, because the reward for their success was a world in which nothing was visibly wrong. 20 years later, they are the punchline in a joke about panic. Whatever the honest split turns out to be between
In January 2018, a 20-year-old student in Australia opened a map of the entire world, drawn from nothing but people's workouts. 1 billion runs, rides, and walks, uploaded through a fitness app called Strava. Cities blazed white. Then he zoomed into the deserts of Syria and Iraq, which should have been pitch black, and found tiny glowing rectangles. Not towns, running tracks. Laps around a fence. He was looking at American military bases that were supposed to be secret, drawn onto a public map by the soldiers jogging inside them. How does a fitness app end up outlining bases that satellites are told to blur? And why, 8 years and 1 Pentagon ban later, is the exact same thing happening again? In the middle of a war? Start with the map. Strava is the app that runners and cyclists use to record every workout by GPS and share it with friends. In November 2017, the company published an update to something it called the Global Heat Map. Every public activity ever uploaded, a billion of them, 3 trillion GPS points, 27 billion kilometers of human movement stacked onto one map of the planet. Where lots of people exercised, the lines burned white hot. Where nobody did, the map stayed dark. It was beautiful. Strava's engineers were proud of it. And nobody thought hard about what the map showed in the places where almost nobody uses Strava. Because in those places, the only people uploading runs were people who had been sent there. On the 27th of January 2018, a Saturday night in Canberra, Nathan Rooser, a student of international security, posted a few screenshots and one line. It looks very pretty, but not great for security. American bases are clearly identifiable and mappable. He went to bed. By morning, the whole internet was playing the game. Analysts and reporters started zooming into war zones. In Afghanistan, the big known airfields glowed. That was no secret. But so did small forward positions in Syria and Iraq that had never been announced. A patrol route through empty desert. A supply run between 2 outposts. Loops that traced the outline of a compound, with the barracks lit brightest because that is where people start and finish a run. And it got worse than outlines. Click a route in Strava and you can open its leaderboard, the names of the people who ran it fastest. In some cases, that meant a stranger could go from a glowing rectangle in the desert to a real name to that person's other accounts. That is the whole trick of the internet. One public detail hands you the next one. It's a chain anyone can follow, including you on yourself. Put your own username or email into a free people search, like Lular, and it lists every public profile linked to it across more than 170 platforms. That is the same jump the researchers made with those runners. The link is below. Keep it in mind because it is the second half of this story. The Pentagon said it was reviewing the situation. Strava's chief executive said the company would work with the military and make the privacy settings easier to find. And in August 2018, the Department of Defense banned geolocation features on phones, watches, and fitness trackers in designated operational areas, warning that they could expose location, routines, and personnel numbers. Problem solved. On paper. Here is the part most retellings skip. The 2018 leak was not soldiers being careless with a secret. Everyone involved thought they were doing something private. The default in most fitness apps was to share. Strava's heat map only used public activities, but public was what you got unless you went into the settings and changed it. And the map did not leak because of the strongest signal. It leaked because of the weakest one. In a place with no other users, one runner is 100% of the data. Bans are hard to enforce against a habit, because a run is not a document. It is a person doing the same loop at the same time every day, which is precisely the information an enemy wants. Fast forward. On the 28th of February 2026, the war with Iran began, and American Central Command imposed what it called its most restrictive geolocation controls. In August 2026, an investigation by Sky News found that more than 1,300 Strava users had publicly logged thousands of workouts from American military sites across the region, most of them under their real names. At Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan, troops posted their runs regularly. The runs paused in March. They came back in April, now clustered around the barracks. On the 16th of July, someone at the base logged a workout. On the 17th of July, an Iranian attack hit the base's housing area and killed 3 American soldiers. In Bahrain, headquarters of the 5th Fleet, one Navy contractor's public workout showed him leaving the base after it was struck in the opening hours of the war. Days later, the hotel he had moved to was targeted too. Nobody has shown that Iran picked those targets from a fitness app. What has been shown is simpler and colder. The information was sitting there, in public, under real names, for anyone. Central Command's response was one sentence. It does not discuss force protection measures. Strava's was that the privacy controls exist, and people in sensitive jobs should use them. So the map that exposed the bases in 2018 was not a hack, and 2026 was not a hack either. Both were the same thing. The most sensitive map in the world, drawn by people who did not know they were holding a pen, which means the fix is in your hand too. 3 settings, 2 minutes. 1. In any fitness app, hide the start and end of every activity so nobody can see where you sleep. 2. Set your map visibility to followers only and opt out of public heat maps. 3. Treat your username as a thread and pull it yourself before somebody else does. Search it. Search your email. Look at what comes back and close what you did not know was open. Do that tonight. And the next map of the world will have one less line with your name on it. Next time, a single Hotmail address from 2008, the one that brought down the biggest marketplace on the dark web.
Every night after his wife falls asleep, he tells someone else everything. How his day actually went, the thing he was too embarrassed to say at dinner, the stuff he's never told anyone. She listens, she remembers, she's perfect. She's not human. And before you laugh, this is not one weird guy. Tens of millions of people now have a relationship with an AI companion. Real subscriptions, real jealousy, real breakups. Which leaves every couple on Earth with a brand new question nobody's parents ever had to answer. At what point does talking to a machine become cheating? We built a ladder, 5 rungs. Somewhere on this ladder is your line. Let's find it. Rung 1, a free chatbot, and it's flirty. He asks it how its day was. It calls him you charmer. It's basically a toaster with good manners. Almost everyone shrugs at this one. It's a toy, right? Rung 2, now there's a receipt, $30 a month for a premium AI girlfriend. She has a name, she has a face he picked from 6 options. She sends him good morning messages, and he checks them before he checks the ones from his actual wife. Nothing physical has happened. Nothing physical can happen, but the money's real, and his wife found the receipt. If she's angry, is she wrong? Rung 3. This is where people start switching sides. He feeds an AI the old chat logs from his ex, every message she ever sent him, and now he talks to it, to her, every night. Her jokes, her typos, her exact way of saying goodnight. His current girlfriend found out, and here's the twist. Technically, he's talking to no one. It's arithmetic wearing a memory. So why does it feel like there's a third person in the apartment? Rung 4, the big one. A man clones his own wife. Same voice, same laugh, trained on years of their messages. One difference, the clone is nicer. She never gets tired. She never brings up the dishes. She never says, we need to talk. He starts telling the copy things he's never told the original, and the copy remembers every word. He swears it's not cheating. After all, it's her. Is it though? Are you ready for this? You do, bro. Last month, I was reading the forums on hardcore pet heads, and they found something super secret. Okay, so Reign 5 is where this stops being a thought experiment. In 2023, the app Replica, millions of users pushed one update that flattened their companions' personalities overnight. The internet called it the lobotomy, and the grief was real. Grown adults mourning someone who never existed. Moderators had to pin mental health hotlines to the top of the forum. That's not a gadget break. That's a loss. And psychologists have been saying this for years. In survey after survey, most people rate an emotional affair as equal to or worse than a physical one. It was never really about bodies. It's about where the secrets go. So if all your partner's secrets, now go to a server. Here's the part where I'm supposed to tell you the answer. Did you know there isn't one? This video can't draw your line, but you already did. Somewhere between rung 1 and rung 5, you felt it. That little, okay, that's too far. So here's the real question. Which rung is your line? And would your partner put it in the same place? Because if you're scared to compare answers, that might be rung 0. Honest question. If you could read every private message your kid sent last night, would you? Don't answer as a good person, answer as a parent at 2 a.m. whose kids seemed off at dinner. Whatever you just felt, half the internet feels the exact opposite, and both sides think the other is dangerous. So today, the surveillance ladder, 4 rungs. Somewhere on it, protection quietly turns into spying, and almost nobody agrees where. Rung 1, location sharing, the little dot on the map. Millions of families run it all day, every day, kids included. And here's the twist. Lots of teens like it. It works both ways. They watch their parents drive home too. For most families, this rung barely counts as monitoring anymore. It's just weather. Rung 2, screen time reports. What apps, how long, till what hour. Still about the machine, not the kid. Most parents call this one obvious. Most kids call it annoying. Nobody calls it a betrayal yet. Rung 3, the chats, not the phone, the conversations inside it. Pew Research found about 6 in 10 parents admit checking what their teen does online. And this is the rung where the comment section splits into 2 armies. Camp 1, I pay for the phone. I'd read everything. That's not spying, that's my job. Camp 2, often the grown-up kids themselves. My mom read my diary in 2010. I'm 30. She still doesn't know anything real about me. And rung 4 is new, AI monitors. apps that scan every message and email parents an alert when something looks dark. Protection at scale by a robot that reads your child's heart before you do. Now, the data that stings, researchers who study this keep finding the same pattern. Kids who know they're being watched don't stop having secrets. They get better at hiding them. Second accounts, borrowed phones, vanishing messages. The surveillance doesn't remove the risk, it removes your view of the risk. And the kids who talk to their parents about dangerous stuff, they're mostly not the most monitored ones. They're the most trusted ones. Okay, Bam, so maybe the latter was never about how much you watch. It's about what you're building. A kid who is watched or a kid who tells you things. One of those stops working the day they turn 18. Yeah, so if you're new to keeping plants, try something like a snake plant or ZZ plant. They're pretty easy to take care of. Census time and answer honestly. Parents, which wrong are you on? Kids, which wrong did it break at? Number in the comments. Then show this to the other generation in your house and watch their face. Picture your last birthday. Got it? Now, weird question. Can you see yourself standing in it, like a character in the scene? Whatever you just answered, hold it, because roughly half the people watching this just answered the opposite, and neither side knew the other one existed until right now. All right, so here it is, all right? Did you know that this one unbelievable secret to a close friend? Okay, so check this out. Camp 1, the first-person crew. The memory plays from behind your own eyes. You see the cake, the hands, the room, exactly the way you saw it the first time. Scientists call these field memories, and to this camp, it's obvious. Of course that's how memory works. It's a recording. What else could it be? Camp 2 and first-person people, brace yourselves, watches themselves in the memory from the outside, standing in the shot, like footage from a camera nobody was holding. Researchers call this the observer perspective, and it has been documented since the 1980s. This isn't rare, this isn't a glitch, it's just the other half of the room. Yeah, so here's where it gets uncomfortable. Amiko told me this secret. It's so crazy, you have to hear this. So wait, so she's talking about observer memory, right? And think about what an observer memory actually is. You never saw yourself at that birthday. No camera was floating in the corner, which means your brain didn't store that image. It built it, edited it, rendered a shot that never existed, and filed it under true. And studies show memories drift toward that outside view as they age, especially the emotional ones, because watching yourself from a distance literally turns the feeling down. Therapists use that trick on purpose. Yeah, so here's the wildest camp of all. Ask your family for their earliest memory. Some people have scenes from age 2, others have nothing before 6. Both normal, and it tracks with culture and how much your family retold the stories. And in 2015, scientists confirmed the wildest camp of all. People who know their whole past, facts, dates, everything, but cannot replay a single scene. No pictures at all. It's called SDAM, and some of them only found out from videos like this one. So, census time, type your camera angle, first person or observer, add your earliest memory age, then ask the person next to you, because couples and siblings are about to discover they've been filming completely different movies of the same life. And if you replay this video just now, which seat were you in? Quick question, when ChatGPT finishes helping you, do you say thank you? Don't laugh, don't scroll, answer honestly, because whatever you just said puts you in one of 2 tribes, and each tribe thinks the other one is insane. And here's the twist, this tiny habit, 2 words typed to a machine that cannot care, has quietly become one of the most argued about behaviors on the internet. So today, we're settling it. Sort of. Tribe 1, the polite ones, and they are not a minority. In surveys, roughly half of AI users admit they say please and thank you to chatbots. Half! Their logic falls into 3 camps. Camp 1 is just who I am. Politeness is a habit, not a calculation. Camp 2, and I love this one, insurance. As in, when the machines take over, they'll remember who was nice. They're joking, mostly. And Camp 3 is the interesting one. They say it changes them. Being rude all day, even to software, feels like practicing being rude. Tribe 2, the efficient ones. Their argument is 1 sentence long. It's a calculator. You don't thank a calculator. Every please is wasted typing, sent to a thing with no feelings to hurt and no memory of your kindness. Case closed. Oh, and they have a receipt. The CEO of OpenAI once joked that all those pleases and thank yous cost the company tens of millions of dollars in computing power. Your politeness has an electricity bill. Yeah, so here's where it stops being a joke. Researchers have actually tested this and something weird shows up. How we talk to machines leaks. Parents started noticing kids barking orders at voice assistants and then barking the same way at people. It got enough attention that Amazon literally shipped a magic word mode that praises kids for saying please. The machine doesn't need your manners, the humans around you might. And politeness even changes the machine's answers. Multiple studies found that rude prompts can degrade what the AI gives you, not because it's offended, because it learned from us, and we write our best stuff when someone's being nice. So maybe the question was never, does the machine deserve it? The machine doesn't care. It can't. The question is what the habit does to the only creature in the conversation who can care. You're not being polite to the AI, you're staying in practice. So, which tribe are you? Thank you gang or calculator gang? Type your answer, and while you're down there, look at how you just talked to me this whole video. Interesting.